The great palace of the alien queen stood high above the shining city, its towers glowing like silver against the deep sky. She was not just a ruler, but also a mother, and her people respected her for her strength, wisdom, and fairness. Yet behind her proud eyes, there lived a secret pain that had never healed. Years ago, her only daughter had vanished. It happened on a day the queen could never forget, a day when her world was filled with both fear and loss. The queen's daughter was just a child then, full of laughter and innocence. She was playing in the royal gardens, surrounded by guards and servants, when suddenly an alarm echoed across the palace. Hostile forces had broken through the defense lines, and in the confusion of the attack, the little princess disappeared. The guards searched everywhere, the skies filled with ships, trying to track down the kidnappers, but nothing was found. When the battle was over, the queen stood in silence, her arms empty, her daughter gone. From that day forward, the queen never stopped searching. She sent her fastest ships to the farthest corners of the galaxy. She commanded her spies to gather information from hidden markets and shadow worlds. Many times she thought she was close, but each lead ended in disappointment. The queen, who was strong enough to face armies without fear, felt helpless in the face of this single truth. Her daughter was lost. Years passed, and the pain grew deeper. The palace remained full of light, but inside her heart, there was always darkness. Still, she never gave up hope. Every night before she closed her eyes, she looked at the stars and whispered a promise to her missing child. One day, I will find you. Far away on a distant world lived a man very different from the queen and her people. He was a human warrior, known among his kind for his bravery and for standing up to injustice. He was not a ruler, nor did he come from a noble family. He had no palace or riches. What he carried instead was a heart full of courage and a spirit that could not be broken. People whispered about his adventures, the battles he fought, the people he protected, and the enemies who feared his name. Yet, he never thought that one day his path would cross with that of an alien queen or her missing daughter. The human warrior first heard of the missing princess through wandering traders. He was sitting by a fire one night, listening to stories from travelers, when one man spoke of a child who had been taken long ago, a child of great importance. At first, the warrior thought it was just another tale, told to pass the time. But as he traveled more, the story kept returning to him in different places from different mouths. Merchants spoke of a young girl hidden away, mercenaries whispered of a royal child sold into secrecy, and smugglers told of powerful enemies who wanted her never to be found. Something about the story touched the human's heart. He thought of the mother waiting, of the child lost and alone, and he felt a pull inside him. He had no duty to this queen or her people, but justice was something he could not ignore. He told himself that if there was even a small chance the princess was still alive, then he must at least try to find her. The journey would not be easy. The clues were faint, hidden between lies and secrets. The enemies who had taken the princess had done everything to cover their tracks. Many others had tried and failed, but the human warrior was different. He did not measure the weight of risk. He simply followed the call of his heart. With little more than his courage and his sharp mind, he began to follow the trail. As he moved, from world to world, he saw the shadows of what had happened. He met people who had once served those who attacked the queen's palace. Some were too afraid to speak. Others demanded rewards or threatened him. But he pressed on, piecing together the fragments of the truth. In his quiet moments, he thought about the child, who by now must have grown older, perhaps never knowing who she truly was. The thought gave him both sadness and determination. He promised himself that no matter how far he had to go, he would not turn back. Back on the Queen's world, the people had long accepted that the princess might never return. But the queen herself never stopped believing. In her heart, there was a bond that could not be broken. She knew her daughter was alive somewhere. What she did not know was that far beyond the reach of her armies, a stranger, a human warrior, had already taken up the search. He had no throne, no crown, and no reason to risk his life for a child he had never met. Yet he was moving closer with each step, guided by courage alone. The story was only beginning, but already fate was weaving two lives together. The mother, who waited in silence, and the warrior who walked into danger. What neither of them knew was that their paths were meant to cross, and that when they finally did, the galaxy would witness something no one had ever imagined. The human warrior's journey began with little more than whispers and scattered clues. He had no maps, no armies, and no wealth to buy information. What he did have was a stubborn will and a reputation that often worked both for and against him. Wherever he went, people either welcomed him with respect or looked at him with suspicion, wondering why a lone human would wander so far into dangerous lands. He started by visiting the trade routes where the first story of the missing princess had reached his ears. The traders there spoke in hushed voices, always looking over their shoulders. Some claimed the child had been taken into slavery, hidden deep in colonies where no law existed. Others said she was being kept by powerful enemies who wanted to use her one day against the queen. None of them knew the truth for certain, but the warrior listened carefully, storing each word in his mind. He understood that sometimes the smallest detail, a slip of the tongue, a direction pointed to the wrong star, could lead to the right path. The journey was full of danger. On one planet, controlled by warlords, he had to fight his way out after asking too many questions. The warlords feared anyone digging into the past, and they sent their hunters after him. The warrior, though outnumbered, escaped with skill, leaving his pursuers behind in the dust. On another world, he traveled into vast deserts, guided only by an old map scratched into the sand by a frightened refugee. There, he found ruins of an old fortress that once served as a holding place for captives. The walls were broken, the rooms empty, but he could see marks left behind, proof that children had once been kept there. He felt a pang in his chest, imagining the young princess among them, calling for her mother, her voice unheard. At times, the warrior felt the weight of loneliness. He was far from home, among species that were not his own. The stars above him looked endless, and the trail seemed to vanish more often than it appeared. But each time he thought of stopping, he remembered the queen's face as it had been described, stern, proud, yet carrying sorrow. He imagined her waiting, night after night, hoping for news. That image gave him strength to take another step forward. Slowly, the pieces began to connect. He met a smuggler who remembered a child being transported in secret years ago. The smuggler was old now, his eyes tired, but he still remembered the little girl who refused to cry even when taken from her world. She had a fire in her, the man whispered. Like her mother, I suppose. Those words stayed with the warrior. If the child was truly like her mother, then she had survived all these years, strong even in the face of pain. But finding her would not be simple. The enemies who took her had worked hard to cover every trace. They moved her from place to place, never letting her stay long in one world. The warrior discovered false trails, rumors planted to mislead anyone who searched. He found himself facing betrayal more than once, guides who offered help only to lead him into traps. Yet his sharp instincts saved him each time. He learned to trust only his heart and the few signs that felt true. His journey took him through places most men would never dare to go. He crossed asteroid belts where ships were torn apart by storms of rock and fire. He entered deep forests on alien planets where creatures with glowing eyes watched from the shadows. He passed through hidden markets where stolen children were sold, his hand always close to his weapon, though his heart ached at the sight of innocent lives treated as nothing more than property. "In those places?" he asked carefully, sometimes pretending to be a buyer, sometimes offering help, and sometimes simply listening. And little by little, a clearer picture formed. The missing princess was alive. He could not yet prove it, but too many voices spoke of her for it to be only rumor. A girl, taken young, kept hidden, protected by those who wanted her never to return home. The warrior knew then that he was no longer just following a story. He was following the truth. The more he uncovered, the more dangerous his mission became. There were those who noticed his search and they did not like it. Shadows followed him, spies whispered his name, and more than once he was attacked in the dark. But each time he fought back, he fought with the strength of someone who believed. In more than survival, he was not fighting for himself. He was fighting for a child who had been lost, and for a mother who still waited. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the warrior felt himself changing. He had fought many battles before, but this journey was different. This was not about glory or honor. It was about love. Love he had never seen but could feel through the bond between mother and daughter. He realized that sometimes the greatest battles were not fought with swords or guns, but with faith and determination. In the quiet of the night, when he sat under unfamiliar skies, he often thought about the girl. Did she remember her mother's face? Did she know where she came from? Or had the years erased all memories of home? He hoped silently that deep in her heart she still carried a piece of that bond, a small light that would one day guide her back. At last, after crossing endless miles of space, after surviving storms, battles, and betrayals, the warrior stood at the edge of a new clue that was stronger than the rest. It was no longer a whisper or a rumor. It was a direction, a path that could lead him to the girl herself. His heart beat faster, for he knew he was drawing closer. Far away, in her palace of silver towers, the queen looked once more at the stars. She did not know that somewhere out there, a human warrior was walking toward the answer she had long prayed for. She only knew that her hope had not died, and that one day her daughter would return. What she could not see was that the warrior was now ready to face the greatest test of his journey, the moment when he would finally find the princess, hidden away, waiting to be brought home. The trail that the human warrior had followed for so long finally brought him to a hidden colony on the edge of a forgotten world. It was not marked on any map. To reach it, he had crossed through a maze of asteroid fields and thick fogs of space dust where most ships would be lost. But the warrior trusted his instincts, and with patience, he made it through. As his ship descended onto the planet, he saw a settlement that looked poor and quiet, built of worn-out stone and metal scraps. From the outside, it seemed ordinary, but the warrior had learned to look beyond appearances. He felt it in his heart. This was the place. The colony was small, with narrow streets where children played barefoot and traders shouted about their goods. The warrior moved through the crowd, blending in as best as he could. He asked careful questions, spoke to old men sitting by the fires, and watched the way people reacted when he mentioned stories of a girl who did not belong. Most looked away, pretending not to hear. But silence often spoke louder than words, and the warrior grew certain the one he sought was here. Days passed as he observed quietly, never rushing, for he knew that those who had hidden the girl would be careful. Then, one evening, he saw her. She was walking with a group of other young people, carrying water from a well. She looked older than the child the queen had lost, but her features carried something unmistakable. A grace, a light in her eyes that did not match the roughness of the colony. Her face was tired, her clothes simple, but there was strength in the way she walked, as if some part of her had never been broken. The warrior's heart tightened. Could this truly be her? He followed from a distance, watching as she returned to a small house at the edge of the colony. For days he observed her, learning her habits, her kindness to the other children, the way she sat outside at night staring at the stars as though they were calling to her. That was when he knew, without doubt, that she was the queen's daughter. Only someone born of the stars would look at them with such longing. Approaching her, however, would not be simple. She had grown up in this place, far from the palace, and she did not know who he was. If he appeared too suddenly, she might fear him. So he began carefully, first by helping the people around her. When one of the children fell ill, the warrior brought medicine from his ship. When a cart broke, he helped fix it with his strong hands. Slowly, his presence became familiar. The girl noticed him too. At first, she kept her distance, but one night, as he sat by the fire, she came closer. "You are not from here," she said softly. Her voice carried both curiosity and caution. "No," the warrior replied with a gentle smile. "I come from far away. I travel where I am needed." She studied him for a moment, her eyes searching. "Why here? No one comes here unless they are lost." "Perhaps," the warrior answered. "I came because someone here is lost, and I was meant to find them." Her brow furrowed at his words, but she said nothing more, and walked away. Still, that moment was enough. A connection had been made. In the days that followed, they spoke more. She told him little pieces of her life, the colony, the work, the emptiness she sometimes felt. The warrior listened patiently, never pushing, never revealing too much. But when the time was right, he shared with her the truth. "You are not meant to live here," he told her one quiet night when the stars burned bright above. "You are the daughter of a great queen. You were taken from her when you were a child. She has searched for you every day since." The girl laughed at first, shaking her head. "That is a story for children. I belong to no one but this place." But the warrior's eyes did not waver. "Look at the stars," he said. "Why do you stare at them every night? Why do you feel the pull of something greater? It is because your heart remembers, even if your mind does not." Her laughter faded. She turned her gaze upward, silent, as though his words had touched something deep inside her. Memories, faint and blurry, began to stir. A garden, bright towers, a woman's voice calling her name. She pressed her hands to her temples, trying to grasp the images, but they slipped away like mist. Still, the feeling was there, strong and undeniable. Before she could answer, danger struck. The ones who had hidden her had noticed the warrior's presence. They feared that the truth would be revealed, and so they sent men to silence him. One night, as he walked through the narrow streets, shadows leapt from the corners. Blades glimmered in the dark, and voices hissed threats. But the warrior was ready. With strength and skill, he fought them off, his movements sharp and precise. The girl saw the battle from her window and realized then that this man was risking his life for her. When the last of the attackers fled, wounded and defeated, she ran to him. "Why?" she cried. "Why would you fight for me? You could leave this place and be safe." "Because you are not meant to be lost forever," he said firmly. "Because your mother waits for you, and her heart cannot rest until you return." Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to deny it, but the truth had already taken root inside her. She remembered the warmth of arms around her, the sound of a lullaby, the feeling of belonging somewhere far greater than this colony. She was not just another girl. She was the daughter of the alien queen. From that night on, she trusted him. She asked him questions about her mother, her home, and her people. He answered with honesty, telling her about the queen's strength, her sorrow, and the hope she still carried. The girl listened, her heart opening with every word. For the first time, she began to believe that she had a place beyond the life she had known. But they both knew the journey ahead would be dangerous. Those who had hidden her would not let her go so easily. The warrior promised her that no matter the risk, he would bring her back to where she belonged. She looked into his eyes and saw not just a fighter, but a protector. Someone who had chosen to stand by her side without asking for anything in return. And so, with her trust placed in him, they prepared to leave the colony. The warrior knew this was only the beginning of the hardest part, the journey home. But he also knew that he was no longer walking alone. By his side was the princess, the lost daughter, ready to face her destiny. The warrior and the princess did not wait long after deciding to leave the colony. They knew that the longer they stayed, the greater the danger would become. The men who had attacked the warrior would not stop with one attempt. Their masters, the same ones who had stolen the princess years ago, would send more. So, under the cover of night, with only the stars above to guide them, the warrior led her away from the colony. The girl hesitated at the edge of the settlement, looking back. One last time. The colony had been her world for as long as she could remember. It was not home, but it was all she had known. She whispered a soft goodbye and then turned to follow the warrior. He gave her a reassuring nod, and together they stepped into the unknown. Their journey was not an easy one. The planet was filled with dangers, thick forests where creatures with sharp fangs lurked, rivers that rushed like roaring beasts, and mountains that stretched endlessly. The warrior used his skill and strength to guide her through, but it was not only his protection that kept them moving. The princess, though she had lived a quiet life in the colony, showed surprising courage. She did not complain when they walked for hours without rest, and she did not cry when the nights grew cold. Instead, she lifted her chin and walked beside him, learning quickly how to move through the wild. There were times when enemies found them. Scouts were sent to capture her and return her to the ones who had hidden her. One night, as they crossed, a valley lights appeared all around them, traps closing in from every side. The warrior stood tall, his eyes scanning for a way out. He held his weapon ready. But he also whispered to the princess, "Stay close. Trust me." Then, with a sudden burst of speed, he led her through a narrow path he had spotted in the shadows. Blades clashed behind them, voices shouted, but he blocked every strike that came near her. At last, they broke free into the open, the night wind rushing over them as they escaped. Through these struggles, the bond between them grew stronger. The princess began to see the warrior not just as a protector, but as someone who believed in her, even when she doubted herself. He encouraged her to keep walking, to keep believing in her true identity. At times, when she felt weak, he reminded her, "You are your mother's daughter. Strength runs in you." And she began to believe those words. They eventually reached the warrior's ship, hidden far outside the colony. For the princess, it was the first time she had seen such a vessel up close. The glowing panels, the strong metal frame, the hum of power. It was unlike anything in the small settlement she had known. Her eyes widened in wonder, and for the first time she felt the closeness of the stars. She was leaving the world she had been trapped in, stepping closer to her destiny. But the journey through space was even more dangerous. The ones who had taken her were powerful, and they had spies and ships in every corner of the galaxy. As soon as the warrior's ship left the planet, enemy signals followed. More than once, dark vessels appeared behind them, their weapons flashing in the void. The warrior piloted with skill, weaving through asteroid fields, diving into clouds of dust, and using the stars themselves to shield them. The princess sat beside him, clutching the seat, her heart racing, but she never asked him to turn back. There were nights inside the ship when they rested in silence, the stars glowing outside the windows. The princess would sit quietly, thinking of the mother she could barely remember. The warrior noticed her silence and would tell her stories. stories of the queen, of her kindness and her wisdom, of how she never stopped searching. The girl listened with tears in her eyes, her heart slowly filling with warmth. "She never gave up on me," she whispered one night. The warrior nodded firmly. "Not for a single day. The closer they came to the queen's world, the more dangerous the pursuit became. It was clear the enemies were desperate to stop them. On one journey through a barren system, their ship was caught in a trap, a net of energy that pulled them toward an enemy base. The warrior fought to break free, the controls shaking under his hands, alarms blaring through the ship. For a moment it seemed hopeless. But then the princess, remembering everything he had taught her, pointed to a narrow gap in the net. "There! Aim for there!" she shouted. He trusted her instincts, and with all his strength, he forced the ship through. Sparks flew, the metal groaned, but they broke free, speeding into the safety of open space. The warrior looked at her with pride. "You are more like your mother than you know," he said. She smiled for the first time in many days, her fear replaced with courage. At last, after countless struggles, the queen's world appeared before them. The sight stole the princess's breath. Towers of shining silver, cities that glowed like stars upon the ground, skies filled with graceful ships. This was the home she had been taken from, though her memories of it were faint. She pressed her hand against the glass, her eyes wide with wonder, but even as they approached, danger still followed. Enemy ships had tracked them to the very edge of the queen's world, determined to stop the reunion. A final battle broke out. Above the shining planet, the warrior fought with everything he had, guiding the ship through fire and chaos. The princess, no longer helpless, stood by his side, ready to help however she could. Together, they made it through, their ship battered but still strong. When they finally entered the skies of the queen's planet, the people below looked up in awe. Rumors had already spread that the lost princess might have been found. Crowds filled the streets, eyes turned toward the heavens, hearts pounding with hope. Inside the ship, the princess gripped the warrior's hand. Her journey was not yet over, but she knew that the hardest part had passed. She was home. The warrior, though weary, felt a deep sense of peace. He had promised himself he would not stop until she was safe, and now, as the towers of the queen's palace rose in the distance, he knew that promise was nearly fulfilled. The moment was close. The daughter was about to return to her mother, and the galaxy would soon witness a reunion that had been prayed for through endless years of sorrow. The palace of the alien queen stood tall and shining as the warrior's ship descended into the royal landing ground. The moment the people saw the vessel, whispers rushed through the crowd like a rising wind. They had heard rumors, but none had dared to believe too strongly. Now, as the doors of the ship opened, every eye turned with hope and fear. The princess stepped out first, her figure small against the grand palace but glowing in the eyes of those who saw her. For a moment, silence fell across the gathered people. Then gasps of recognition rippled through the crowd. Some had served in the palace when she was a child, and they remembered the light in her eyes. Tears filled their eyes as they whispered to one another, "It is her. She has returned." The queen stood at the top of the palace steps, her posture regal but her hands trembling. For years she had dreamed of this moment, and yet now, when it was before her, she feared her heart would not be strong enough. She took one step down, then another, her eyes fixed on the young woman before her. The princess, though nervous, lifted her chin and walked forward. The warrior stayed behind, his eyes watching carefully, his heart calm but heavy with the weight of what was about to happen. When mother and daughter finally stood only a few steps apart, time seemed to stop. The queen looked into the girl's face, searching for the child she had lost. And then she saw it. The same light, the same spark, the same soul. Her strength broke. Tears welled in her eyes, streaming freely down her cheeks as she whispered, "My daughter, my child." The princess's own eyes filled with tears. Memories stirred within her, not clear but strong enough to make her chest ache. She fell into her mother's arms, and the queen embraced her as though she would never let go again. The crowd erupted in cheers, voices rising to the heavens, but the queen did not hear them. She held her daughter close, crying openly before her people, showing that even a ruler as strong as she carried a mother's love that could not be hidden. The warrior stood quietly at a distance, his lips curved in a faint smile. He had fought countless battles, but none as meaningful as this. He watched as the queen held her daughter, the weight of sorrow finally lifted from her heart. For the first time in many years, the queen's palace was filled not with grief, but with joy. After what felt like an eternity, the queen lifted her head and looked toward the warrior. Her tears still flowed, but her eyes shone with gratitude. She stepped forward, holding her daughter's hand, and led her to where the human stood. The people parted to let her pass, bowing their heads in respect. The queen stopped before the warrior. For a moment she could not speak, her heart too full. Then, with a trembling voice, she said, "You have given me back what I thought I had lost forever. No gift in this universe could be greater. You risked everything, though you owed me nothing. For that, I will honor you until the end of my days." The warrior bowed his head humbly. "I did not do it for honor, Your Majesty," he replied. "I did it because no child should be lost and no mother should live without hope. I only brought her home." The queen's tears fell again, but this time they were tears of joy. She took his hand and lifted it high for all the people to see. "This man," she declared, her voice strong even through her emotions, "is no stranger. He is a protector, a savior, and a true friend of our world. Let his name be remembered as the one who returned our princess." The crowd erupted in cheers louder than before, their voices shaking the air. They called out to the warrior, praising him, blessing him, and thanking him. Children ran forward with flowers, offering them to him with wide smiles. The princess, standing by his side, looked at him with eyes full of gratitude and love, not the love of romance, but the love of one who had been saved, protected, and guided home. That night, the palace was filled with light and celebration. Music echoed through the halls and feasts were laid out as the people rejoiced. The queen did not leave her daughter's side for even a moment. She listened to her stories, however simple they were, and treasured every word. She touched her daughter's hair, her hands, as if to make sure she was real and not a dream. The princess, though overwhelmed, felt warmth she had never known. She belonged here. She was no longer lost. The warrior was seated at a place of honor, though he did not seek it. He ate little, content to watch the joy around him. Many came, to him to thank him personally. Some knelt before him, others clasped his hands, and all spoke words of respect. Yet he remained humble, always saying the same thing: "I only did what was right." When the celebration quieted and the stars shone over the palace, the queen called the warrior to her private garden. The princess was already asleep, safe in her chambers for the first time in years. The queen stood among the flowers, her face calm but still soft with emotion. "Warrior," she said gently, "you have given me my life back. My daughter is my heart, and without her I was only half alive. Tonight, you returned her to me, and with her you returned my soul." She paused, her eyes glistening again. "I owe you a debt that cannot be measured." The warrior shook his head. "There is no debt between us. Your daughter's safety is enough reward for me." But the queen stepped closer, placing her hand on his shoulder. Then let my gratitude be remembered not in riches, but in memory. Let every child in this world grow up hearing your story, so that they may learn what true courage and kindness look like." The warrior bowed, touched by her words. He had never sought to be remembered, but he understood the honor she gave him. In that moment, he realized that his journey had not been about battles or enemies. It had been about love, the love of a mother for her child and the love of a protector for the innocent. As the night grew quiet, the queen looked up at the stars with her daughter sleeping safely nearby, and for the first time in many years, her heart felt whole. The warrior, though ready to leave when his duty was done, knew that a piece of him would always remain here, in the memory of this family he had helped to heal. And so, the galaxy remembered the story of the alien queen who cried. Tears of joy when her lost daughter returned, and the human warrior who, with courage and heart, made the impossible possible.